Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Hussein Mahadi, and I will be our moderator for today's JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship session for Artificial Intelligence and Technology. Good afternoon, Ms. Juliana. Good afternoon, Ivy. Nice to see your beautiful faces. Good afternoon, Olua Busola. Good afternoon, our mentors that are with us and everybody. Nice to see your beautiful faces. You are encouraged to edit the name section of your Zoom and also put on your video. Thank you very much. So today, our topic for today is artificial intelligence, ethics, and governance. And we'll be having 3 mentors for today's program. The first mentor is Mr. Akin Agumbiade. Second mentor is Mr. Matt Harvey, and the third mentor is Miss Bellona Sona. So I think we have Miss Bellona here with us. Join me in welcoming our mentor for today, and Mr. Matt is also joining us. Thank you very much. Quickly, I'll be making some announcements. Okay, firstly, I will be talking about the program. So JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship Program is a quarterly program for young professionals across Africa. Mentees are afforded the opportunity to access valuable advice training network, mentorship, internship discussion forums, industry updates, and resource materials from experienced mentors. Program seeks to encourage continuous training, development, and evolution in Africa and around the world. The objectives of the program is to provide easy access to quality professional guidance, training, and resource materials for students and young professionals in Africa, to facilitate dialogue and network among experienced and less experienced practitioners and stakeholders, to transform mentees into leaders and mentors of the next generation, and to facilitate mentorship, internship, scholarship, and job placements for the mentees. That's all we are all about. So another announcement for today is that the first quarter of JIIPCC 2023 registration is currently ongoing. You can share with your friends and colleagues that are interested in any of the areas we offer. We are also going to be having a JIIPCC get-together party by the end of the year in Lagos on the 17th December and in Abuja on the 10th December. So you are encouraged to be on that meeting, on that party, sorry. There will be a lot of fun, games, drinks, music, and lots more. So the final announcement is that there will be a 30-minute private session that is available for all our mentees. If you are interested in any of the mentors, having a 30-minute session, one-on-one session with any of our mentors, you are advised to register, and you will be given the opportunity to meet the mentor. So that will be all. I'll be calling on, okay, I'll also be reading the mentor's profile for today. Our first mentor being Mr. Akin Agumbiade. He's an AI researcher with a focus on policy, ethics, and governance. He's also a For Humanity certified AI system auditor under the UK EU GDPR, the first African to be certified as such. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Akin Agumbiade. A second mentor is Mrs. Bellona Sona. Ms. Bellona Sona is a PhD candidate at the Humanizing Machine Intelligence at the ANU, founder of Bell's AI Initiative, manager ethics and gender issues at Afro Leadership, 100 Brilliant Women in AI Ethics 2022. So that's our second mentor for today. Join me in welcoming our second mentor. And the last mentor for today is Mr. Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey is the head of AI law and partner at Glowing WLG UK, LLP advising on AI across all sectors. He is a co-editor of the Law of Artificial Intelligence, Sweets and Maxwell. He is a trusted intellectual property advisor, especially for clients with complex patent disputes, including SEP, fraud, litigation. Legal 500 has described him as standout and absolutely superb for patent disputes. His case have involved video compression, telecommunication, 2D, 3D, LTE, DSL, and other standards. Aircraft design, software, algorithm training, consumer shared trade platforms, 3D modeling, customer electronics, inkjet printer, location sensing, and traffic analysis. He has extensive experience in healthcare and life science, working including monoclonal antibiotics, biosphere, toxin, medical device, and cosmetics. He has handled product clearance and disputes involving copyright, trademark, design, and confidential design for clients in the aerospace, retail, fashion, automotive, and financial service sector. He successfully defended the Kennedy Trust for rheumatology research in UK's first biosimilar dispute and helped win Fujifilm KU1 Crane Biologics.co Limited and first UK Arrow declaration. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Matt Harvey. So I'll be calling on our mentees today. We have two groups. So the first group will go first. You have 8 minutes for your PowerPoint presentation, after which our mentors will give us their contributions and comments. So the first mentee is for group 1. Who is the presenter for group 1? You can unmute yourself now and start presenting. Thank you very much. Group 1 presenter, are you with us?
Yes, I'm. Good afternoon, everyone. So, I'll be presenting on artificial intelligence, governance, and regulation. So, to start the presentation, I would like to share our PowerPoint presentation. So, I would like to share my screen with us. Okay, so I'll let's start from the first slide. Our topic is artificial intelligence, governance, and regulation. So first, I'll start by stating what artificial intelligence is. Artificial intelligence is the simulation of human intelligence processes by machines, especially computer systems. So it's basically the development of computer systems that are able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. So that is what artificial intelligence is. It is the intelligence of humans inputted into machines such that such machines imitate human capabilities to perform specific tasks. Now, the scope of artificial intelligence has every sector of modern life. With the invention of technology now, we have our phones, our laptops, motor vehicles, and what have you. These are artificial intelligence pass through all these technological means of operating our day-to-day life. So, like I said earlier, artificial intelligence passes through every area of our day-to-day life. So we can see examples of this in some of the things we use. For example, Google Maps, which a lot of people who move around use now. We have Google Maps, we have robots, we have self-driving cars, we have vacuum cleaners, we have a speech detector, and a whole lot of technologically advanced technology that we use in our day-to-day life. Now, the goals of artificial intelligence is not to eliminate human input, but it is to synchronize the input of machines and humans such that one complements the other. Humans will complement machines in that the intelligence that is inputted in machines are actually inputted by humans. And such intelligence in turn now help humans in achieving their, performing their day-to-day tasks. Now, when we talk about artificial intelligence governance, the idea behind artificial intelligence governance is that there should be a legal framework. There should be policy in place that will govern the use of artificial intelligence by organizations. The use of artificial intelligence should not be at large, such that all organizations will just do what they want to do when they want to do. There should be regulations, there should be policies, there should be guidelines, and that is what artificial intelligence governance. That's the idea behind artificial intelligence governance. It is how to manage artificial intelligence in the context of an organization. That is what artificial intelligence governance is. Now, the importance of artificial intelligence governance, like I said earlier, the essence is for the use of artificial intelligence not to be at large. So the importance of artificial intelligence is for control. We should have, even though we are in a technologically advanced age, but there should be control. There should be control of the use of artificial intelligence when it is talk of morals and ethics. And that is the importance of artificial intelligence governance. Now, we discussed who should be responsible for artificial intelligence governance, and we came up with the fact that it should be the government which put in place policies that involve by artificial intelligence in Nigeria. But so far,
I don't know if anybody can hear her. I think I lost her. Okay.
No, we can't hear her. Please, there's a backup presenter.
Okay, backup presenter for group 1. You can continue from where she stopped and share the screen too. Okay, if there's no backup presenter, I think if group 2 is ready, you can start your presentation. Then after group 2, she will continue from where she stopped when she joins us. Group 2, presenter for group 2, please, you can unmute yourself and start presentation.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen now.
Hold on, I think she's back.
Okay.
Okay, just let her finish. Okay, you can continue.
Okay,
Unmute
thank you
yourself,
very
please.
much. Yes, I have. Thank you. I'm sorry for the break. I don't know what happened with my network. I ensured that it was fine before we started. I was talking about who is responsible for the for artificial intelligence governance. The government should be the ones responsible for artificial intelligence governance, because why we should have governance is that we want to have a responsible use of artificial intelligence. And so far, we have not been able to lay our hands on any specific policy or regulation on artificial intelligence. We have the National Artificial Intelligence Policy, we have the Cybersecurity Act, we have the Copyright Act, we have the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, but all these laws and regulations have not specifically made provisions for the use of artificial intelligence. So we are hoping that at the long run, that the Nigerian government, the legislators in Nigeria will be able to come up with regulations and laws to govern the use of artificial intelligence in Nigeria. And then there's one important aspect, and it is that we should not confuse the artificial intelligence governance with artificial intelligence regulation. Governance is the responsible use of artificial intelligence, while regulation are the policies and laws that are put in place by the government for the use of artificial intelligence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Oluwa Busola, for that wonderful presentation and giving us the clarity of the difference between AI governance and AI regulations. Thank you very much once again. So I'll be calling Group 2 to start their presentation. Presenter for Group 2, you can unmute yourself and share your screen.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll go ahead and share my
Good
screen.
afternoon.
So my name is Tofumi. I am the speaker for Group 2, and the topic we were given was artificial intelligence ethics. We first of all studied the concept of AI, and at its most basic level, AI is the replication of human intelligence in machines to enable them to solely perform tasks that would have otherwise required human inputs. And then ethics are just the moral principles that govern behavior. As of now, the only somewhat global code for AI ethics is a UNESCO document. It is Annex VII of the resolution of the 41st session of General Conference of UNESCO, which held last year, 2021. It recognizes the profound dynamic, positive and negative impact of AI on societies, ecosystems, and human mind. It sets out to promote respect and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms for human dignity. This document, this UNESCO document, since as of now, it's the only global document, it aims to present itself as a standard-setting instrument. It aims to be the legal framework for other countries and for other bodies to build more legally binding frameworks on AI ethics. And it was developed through a global approach. It was developed through inputs from all UNESCO countries, and it is based on international law. It focuses on human dignity, human rights, gender equality, socioeconomic justice, diversity, inclusiveness, and the likes. The document also has 11 policy areas, and it has certain principles which we also discussed in our slides. The major principles of the UNESCO document are avoidance of harm, prevention of vulnerabilities, promotion of social justice, equity, equality, and fairness, promotion of public awareness, and respect of international law. All of these are important because with AI, the lines have really been blurred, because with automation of administrative functions, and with bringing in machinery to perform certain human tasks, the lines have been blurred because the law really did not have a place in AI development and in the metaverse at first. The first time AI was discussed was about 7 decades ago. And since AI has just started to become commercialized and it's suddenly becoming a big thing globally, it's important that these principles are protected, especially the principles protecting international law and protecting public awareness and safety of man, because it is very possible that when it comes to AI systems such as metaverses and virtual realities, that the law is protected. And since it is a virtual reality, in as much as a human needs to be there for a virtual reality to function, that a human should still have the same rights protected that they have in the physical world. So the aspects of the ethics of AI that we discussed, the first one is discrimination and bias. Discrimination and bias is something that has been an issue even beyond AI, but it's sad that the same thing is being replicated when it comes to AI. So algorithms that have been developed for AI systems have this inherent bias. So the best example that we could think of was the search engine bias. So when you search for countries in Africa, let's say you search for a country in Africa, let's say you search for Nigeria, the first images you are likely to see are images that depict poverty or votes, or images that just do not represent the greater percentage of the country. And then when you search for first world countries, you see images that show development. And also when it comes to things as simple as food, when you search for countries in Asia and you search for recipes, the images you're likely to see are images that will scare you, images that maybe have images that have animals that are usually not eaten, or they have insects, or they're just images that will be off-putting. And it's wrong because these are images that are taken out of context. These are images that do not really show the true nature, the true aspect of that country. And it's only sad that these are algorithms that have been developed for AI. So most AI systems now have that kind of bias. And it's also been a concern because when it comes to AI and robotics, it's very possible that a robot that has been developed with a certain AI algorithm has the potential of being racist. So the next aspect of ethics of AI that we looked at was manipulation. Manipulation can come in the form of advertisements, in the form of pop-ups, in the form of cookies. And Facebook has really been under blast for this recently. A few days ago, Nigeria sued Meta rather, for 30 billion naira because of illegal ads on Facebook and Instagram and other social media spaces. And what these ads do is that they track people's browser history, they track where they've gone, they basically track things about the person's life, and Google does that as well. They basically track things about the person's life, and they give them advertisements that are based on that. They give them advertisements that are likely to make them take a certain action. So it's more like they have studied a human being, and then the AI system generates suggestions that could manipulate someone to do something. And then virtual reality environments like Facebook enable psychological and emotional manipulation of their users, still through advertisements and through things like bots. It has been a problem on Instagram a lot recently that bots comment on people's posts, or bots follow somebody and it messes up their like count, or it messes up their follower count, and people buy likes, things like that. So we also looked at human-robot interaction. The major distinction between AI and robotics, at least to us, because there still are debates on this, whether robotics is different from AI. But the major difference between robotics and AI is that robotics requires human intervention. Robotics requires human input. So robotics is where you would see maybe remote controls, or you would see a human be able to control the robot, be able to control a robot's responses or certain other things. But artificial intelligence is where systems emulate the human mind to learn. So like what was said in the introduction, artificial intelligence, it replicates human intelligence in machines to enable them to solely perform tasks that would have been required with human input. So we also looked at employment and autonomy. The issue with AI when it comes to employment and autonomy is that the automation of administrative functions has affected the labor market. So systems that use a measure of AI, such as Netflix, they have completely taken out entire businesses such as Blockbuster. We know before there was Netflix, there was Blockbuster. You would go, you would rent a movie, you would get the movie, but now you pay for Netflix and Netflix gives you recommendations, and it's even affecting the cinema business, apart from Blockbuster, because Blockbuster has been completely wiped out, it has been shut down. So now it's even affecting the cinema business. And this really started during COVID, because it's like, okay, if I can have recommendations, if I can have access to certain things through AI and through certain technology, it is affecting the part of the labor markets that actually needs human input. And we believe that the limitations of autonomous AI that are not a good fit for all applications, particularly those that are difficult to quantify the best outcome. And human interaction is necessary for most environments. Human interaction is necessary for most businesses. And it is difficult when everything is automated, when maybe you walk into a coffee shop and the barista is just a tablet and you're just going through the motions with that. And that's dangerous to the labor market, and it's dangerous to human well-being, which is something that the Unesco guidelines are also trying to protect against. And on the other hand, there's also a debate that it's wrong to say that AI is taking jobs and depriving humans' ability to think on their own. It's still an ongoing debate. And it's more like AI has simplified human existence. So people would say that, okay, during COVID and like during the pandemic and during subsequent things that have happened, such as hurricanes and other natural disasters, that if not for AI, humans would have been in a very tight spot. So during COVID, if not for AI technologies, things like contactless delivery would not have been possible. Things like getting access to entertainment and getting access to other necessary things for human living would not have been possible without a measure of AI and without the level of AI development that we have globally right now. And AI has the major purpose of AI was always to augment human efforts. It was always to support human efforts, to make sure that, okay, things are easier for human beings, or things are done on a more excellent scale, and not particularly to replace humans in labor markets. The fear with AI, the problem with AI is that when you give technology its own consciousness, when you give it its own intelligence to make certain decisions, it becomes dicey whether human efforts would still be needed in the long run. An example of this is Saudi Arabia's Sophia bot. At a point, some of the things that she was saying were problematic, because I think at a point she started asking for citizenship and she was able to make her own decisions. And when bots come into consciousness like that, it becomes dangerous. It becomes dangerous. It becomes a comic book nerd's nightmare, because it's like, what's next? Do robots take over everything? Do robots take over the labor markets? Do they take over everything? So what is now the space for humans in our own environment? Then artificial morals. The major question here are value systems safe with AI? Do AI algorithms share the same values that we as humans have? And it has been a recurring question. It's also something that was brought up in the UNESCO guidelines. We keep going back to the UNESCO guidelines because as of now, like I said, it is the only somewhat global code for AI ethics as of now. Other countries have laws that they're developing, but the UNESCO guidelines are the only ones that are global as of now. And we believe that systems should be designed for the preservation of values. So algorithms shouldn't be designed in a way that they can start to recode themselves, or they can start to remanage themselves to do certain things that are not in tandem with the value system that humans share. So for instance, we have systems that understand traditional socio-technical systems. So systems that in a certain country. So for example, in Japan, the AI systems they work in tandem with the culture. They work in tandem with the greetings and the respect and everything else that a normal human would do. They do not cross that line of becoming disrespectful or becoming more important in quotes than humans. The negative impacts of AI bias, loss of certain jobs, a shift in human experience, accelerated hacking, and AI terrorism. AI terrorism has really been on the rise because recently we have heard of things like virtual thefts and virtual rape. A lot of this really has to do with IP. I mean, things like the Meta Birkins case, being Happy Monkey case, things like that, they're still ongoing because it's when you bring AI into human systems, when you bring the virtual realities into human systems, it starts to blur the lines of where the law applies and where is lawless. And unfortunately, as of now, a lot of people still see AI systems and metaverse as no man's land and as a lawless space. So the solutions that we have, as of now, it's not enough to have a code because the UNESCO code is not legally binding. Nigeria as well has an AI code, but it's also not legally binding yet because it's just a code, it's just a policy. So it's important that policy measures by the government and other strategies are adopted to bring AI ethics into life, make sure that they're legally binding. And the recommended policy actions that we have 3. And the first main action is that member states put in place effective measures. So there are policy frameworks, there are mechanisms, there are laws. As of now, the EU is still developing its AI Act, which is supposed to be a legally binding law for AI. So there are AI guidelines, and these guidelines, they're not just guidelines in the main sense of it. They also make sure that everyone who is using an AI system abides by those laws, and that AI systems that go beyond these guidelines, AI systems that kind of blur the lines, must be shut down. The next guideline we have is that member states and business enterprises should implement appropriate measures to monitor all phases of an AI system lifecycle. So from development to testing to use, make sure that there are measures to monitor these AI systems, make sure that they do not go beyond, that they do not start to act beyond what is necessary. They do not start to act beyond human interaction. Like I mentioned, Saudi Arabia, Sophia robot, she is constantly being monitored. She's constantly being watched. And other countries that develop robots, countries in Asia, and then certain countries in Africa, such as South Africa and Rwanda, that are delving into AI and developing robots and developing AI systems. They have to constantly be monitored to make sure that the algorithms that are used for decision making and data and all AI actors involved in the process are ethically, they make sure that data is ethically sourced, one, and make sure that these processes are in alignment with ethics and AI ethics. And then the government should adopt a regulatory framework that sets out a procedure for authorities to carry out ethical impacts on. So for this, like I mentioned, the EU has an AI Act. There has recently been pressure on the EU to develop something that relates to AI, especially because of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and just how much technology is pivotal to that agreement. So it's important that not only countries, but member states regulate bodies that are regional and continental bodies, and even international bodies such as UN, make sure that there are regulatory frameworks for AI systems, make sure that these frameworks set up a procedure so that hopefully at some point there will be a global procedure to measure AI and to watch over the AI space. So thank you very much. I think that's all that we have.
Okay, thank you very much, Grace, for that wonderful presentation. Personally, I think you did a very great job. I think we all listened attentively and learned a thing or two. Thank you very much once again for everybody that's come together to put on that presentation for Group 1 and Group 2. So we're calling our mentors now to give us some comments and recommendations. So the first mentor I'll be calling is Miss Belona Sona. Please, you can unmute yourself and talk. I'm sorry, we can't hear you, ma. I think it's because of the headphone you are using. I don't know, but we can't hear you.
Is that okay now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you for the two groups for the presentation. Okay, I will go first with the first group and secondly with the second group. For the first group about governance, I like the way you really make the difference between what is regulation and what is governance. And because most of the time there is a big confusion when we talk about governance and regulation, we can't really make this difference. We can't really see the importance of each concept in the role of controlling AI, if I can say it that way. So I really like this precision. And globally, the presentation was good. And I'm not really specialized in governance AI, so I have learned a lot about this presentation as well. And but I will invite the member of the groups to give reference about that. I mean, the reference they use to make their work, the reference they use to make their work first, and also I will also invite them to have a kind of, let's say, study case of real case example that they can use to really explain what they mean about the concept they say. As I said, I'm not really specialized in governance. I will go to the second presentation, which is really my background, something related to my background. Okay, about the AI ethics, I really like the way they present the topic in general, how they define AI, how they bring along the ethics. I like the way they really list some principle of AI ethics, and they really show us some cases where AI ethics fails or when AI fails, and yeah. But I will have a lot of, because it's my topic, I will have a lot of recommendation for this group. It doesn't mean that the work wasn't good. It just means that this is where I can really help, right? So to start first, I will say that once you are giving a topic about AI ethics, it's always good to mention the principle as they did. But aside of principle, you should really focus on the values, because the values are the concrete concept that help people to evaluate whether the principles are respected or not. For example, when it's listed like AI should respect human rights, how the question that you should ask yourself about after saying this is, how can we make sure that AI respect human rights? And if you answer this question, you will understand the values that we need. She mentioned values, but for each principle come with values. For example, for the first principle, when I say my AI should respect human rights, the answer of this question in Nigeria should not be the same, for example, in Cameroon, should not be the same in Japan, should not be the same in Asia, should not be the same in Australia, for example. And this is the whole of the value. So when UNESCO, they write all these guidelines, we have also guidelines for Google set its own guidelines. Many people set with their own guidelines, but the answer, the value, give more attention on this principle. As I said, when I say AI should respect human rights, what does it mean? For example, for me, it means that for me, it could mean that when I'm making an AI, and the AI should never, for example, let's say insult someone. And when this value is set, I have a tool that can help me to assess whether the principle is respected in the process. This is for, let's say, non-computer scientist background, for example. And for a computer scientist, what does it mean? And you should do the same for all the principle. I saw also one of the principles was about explainability, transparency, and all. How should we consider that a system is explainable or transparent? And again, when you answer the question, you have the values or the tools that will need you to assess whether the principle is respected or not. And yeah, this is the main things I have with this presentation. And secondly, I also like the way at the end of the presentation they highlight that even if it seems like AI has a lot of can have negative impact in our society, but they mention a kind of calling action, things to how to involve people to make sure that we control AI. I really like that, and I will add my ideas about that as well. So first of all, it's good to wait for like international regulation system to access AI or to control AI or to regulate AI. But our own level, everyone in the society have its own responsibility to make sure that AI we respect AI ethics. For example, I used to divide society in three actors. For example, we have the end user. The end user, most of the time, the end user do not have any background about computer science or anything. But at least they have their own responsibility in the process, in the development of AI, for example. At least they have, because when you are making an AI system, basically you are using a representation of an environment data to produce your AI system. So the end user are the end user most of the time are those who are producing those data. It means that if they are not really serious when they are producing data, at some point they are already biasing the model, for example. So you have your own responsibility. Everyone has his own responsibility in making AI ethics be respected or contributing in the conception of good AI. Secondly, we have those who are involved in AI. I will put in that group those who are the computer scientists or those who are specialized in regulation or governance. I will put them in the same level. When you have this responsibility in the conception of an AI, you should at least understand the system, understand the environment where your model will be deployed. As computer scientists, you should understand the problem that you are solving. you should understand the environment. That will help you to choose the right tools, for example, to mitigate bias, to reduce bias in the system. For regulator and governance, to those who are interested in those sectors, if they don't understand the system, they don't understand the environment, for example, they won't really set, as I was saying, the values that can be used to assess whether the models works or fit the needs of the society. And finally, we have who have the power, for those people, they should really not put their own interest in front of the challenge. They should listen for other people, listen for the AI works for everyone. This is my humble contribution, and I'm happy to answer question if any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Velona. Your contributions were very, very insightful, and you gave us so many good points on AI ethics. So I'll be calling on Mr. Matt Harvey. So you can give us your contributions too.
Many thanks, and thank you to both groups for two excellent presentations. They were clearly very well researched and well presented, so thank you both. Just going through some thoughts, pretty much in the order you raised them. I liked Group 1's definition of AI. It's the definition I prefer, or along those lines, which is essentially an attempt to automate a task normally thought to require human intelligence. Interestingly, there really is no agreed definition at all, though. And this is an area of research that goes back to the 1940s. And I think over that time, there's been a lot of different views about what they were trying to achieve. And the definition is often affected by the context in which you hear it. So as an academic study, it's often seen as the study of human intelligence by using artificial intelligence. And at the other end of the spectrum, when it comes to regulation, the definition, for example, in the European Act, includes the harms they're worried about to a certain extent. So they're only worried about AI that has a real world effect and acts largely autonomously. So it depends who you ask and why they're making a definition, but yours is my preferred definition anyway. You talked about the goal of complementing humans, and another word I often hear is augmenting humans, and the idea is you get the best result by not having a robotic surgeon, but having a human surgeon supported by AI to make their decisions better and their actions better. And I totally agree that in terms of employment, in terms of having what's called a human in the loop, some human involvement in critical activities, it is very appealing. I don't think it's any defined goal of AI, and I think that's why we need laws and regulation and guidance to make sure that we do achieve AI which is in balance with what we want our society to achieve. You then tackled a very complicated issue, which is the distinction between regulation and governance. And like Velona, it's not my expertise either. And as a lawyer, I tend to focus on laws, which I would give the examples of, that theft is illegal, or hacking is illegal, or discrimination is illegal. And then below that, I often end up looking at regulation, which is more about, certainly from the EU's point of view, in order to sell certain products, you need to have complied with certain requirements. And really, a lot of it's about making sure that you've considered risks, you've tried to mitigate them, and you've kept records and the like. And then you've been talking about governance. And as I think I've understood it, governance is the way in which you approach these issues. So you have the proper structures, the proper people, the proper questions asked to try to actually stay within the law and to be ethical. It's not something at the moment, I'm that heavily involved in. So it's very interesting talk. So thank you very much. And then Bologna is more on the ethics side, which is yet another perspective on these issues, and highly complex. So really a very interesting morning altogether. So thank you for inviting me. And then turning to group two, and group two covered a lot of ground. So it's very hard to respond in a short time to the whole thing, but it was an excellent talk, and thank you very much. And I was very interested to have you take me through what Unesco is doing. I tend to be focused more nationally, so I'm looking at what the UK is doing and what Europe is doing in terms of specific laws and regulations. So I was very interested in the perspective from UNESCO. Unsurprisingly, for a high-level international group, what they're doing is largely tracking human rights in general and saying that AI needs to be compatible with human rights. But one of the things that very much stood out to me, and which you mentioned, was their focus on the need for awareness. And I think that's of critical importance, and it goes to two things at least. One is, as Bologna was saying, getting AI right is often a matter of context, and that requires awareness from all of the people who might be affected by it, because a lot of the potential harms to society, it's very hard to decide now what the solution is, and the solution is not necessarily technical. The solution is a social decision. And I'll give you the example that troubles me the most. It is widely believed, and I don't know if this is true, it's widely believed that social media has led to more political extremism, because the algorithm has been optimized to make you look at more content. And I think unintentionally, the algorithm has started to push more extreme content towards people because it's more arresting of your attention. It makes you look and it makes you read more. So no one intended to make people more politically extreme, but it's been an unintended consequence. But what's the solution? The solution is a social decision, which balances issues of freedom of speech and whether a state should involve itself in what people believe. And that's not an AI issue, that's a social issue. So it's very hard to know how to resolve it, but what it requires is a whole society to be involved. The second issue with awareness is skills. And to give you an example from the UK, our lawmakers here do not have enough skilled people to produce the regulation as fast as we would like. And our government is having to make priority decisions about what areas of the use of AI to focus on first. So, we need skilled people to step up as soon as possible in this new era. I was also very interested in what you said about bias, and you used the phrase that you seem to imply that algorithms are inevitably biased. And I was thinking about that, and I think you're actually right. The technology itself doesn't mean that things will be biased, but as a matter of practice, what we're talking about here, and you were very good about setting this in the history that AI is very old, but has suddenly become more powerful, and that's really all about machine learning, and in particular, where you use large data sets to allow a computer to figure out on its own how to replicate human decisions using training data. Now, that leads to bias in three ways. The first is that it may get very accurate data of a real world, but it actually reflects the biases that already exist in the world. So it is biased like we are. The second problem is where the data is in some way less complete for some groups than for others. And that means it actually doesn't reflect the real world in all its complexity. And the classic examples are cameras that can't recognize the faces of all ethnicities equally, search engines that misrepresent countries, as you giving those examples, because they don't have enough data to get a full and representative picture. And I think that is practically, I think inevitable is not mathematically correct or philosophically correct, but in practice, it means for most of the time, AI will in some way be biased. And the third one is, even if I could generate a perfect AI today, the real world moves on and it will drift and its accuracy will fall away and it will become biased over time. So I think you're very right to raise that issue. And I wanted to point out two aspects of bias. The one is discrimination, and that's incredibly important. And you talked about the use of AI in administration. And you also talked about robotics. Now, it's absolutely true that it would be horrific if a robot was racist, or if an AV, an autonomous vehicle, couldn't recognize all ethnicities equally and might be more likely to kill someone that it didn't recognize because it lacked the training data. But bias is also about computers. Actually, it's another way of explaining the fact that computers lack common sense, because all it can do is replicate the things it's seen done in training data, and it doesn't understand the world in any shape or form. And so it's racist, if it's racist, because it hasn't seen enough examples of every ethnicity. Equally, if a self-driving car hasn't seen enough wheelchair users or people pushing bicycles rather than riding them, it's biased. But what that really means is it doesn't know what to do. It doesn't understand what it's seen, and it will make mistakes, and those could be fatal. And so bias is a critical issue to address. But as you said, it can't be eliminated. So a lot of this is about impact assessments, monitoring, and trying to improve all the time. And I think you conveyed that very well. You talked a bit about robotics as well, and I just wanted to explain, and I think you had this point anyway with the administration point about access to services. It's not just robots which are dangerous at all. You know, they may kill you, but the use of AI in services, access to healthcare, access to loans, all of that can have a huge social impact if it's not addressed. A general point I had was, some of your talk gave examples of virtual reality or like Netflix streaming service, things like that. It's very hard in this field to distinguish between what we mean by AI and just digital things in general, the use of data and high tech and whatnot. And although that's incredibly relevant, everything you say is relevant to every digital project. I think in order to have the right regulation and governance for AI, we need to almost look at AI through the perspective of what's dangerous about AI in particular. So to give you an example, any project that uses a lot of personal data, we have privacy issues, whether or not it's AI. But what is it about AI that's really dangerous? And I think you identified a number of the issues. One is bias, and I've discussed why I think that's particularly difficult when you have a machine learning approach, and that's definitely an AI issue. And the other things are opacity. So the problem is, if machine learning, you've ended up training the machine on data and it's found its own way of reproducing human behavior, you don't actually understand how it's doing it. And so you don't know how it's making its decisions. And that's very fundamental to regulation in this space. And that touches on the next point, which means it's very hard to know who's gone wrong, who's liable when there are accidents. And that's partly to do with the opacity problem. No one knows how it works. It's also the fact that to make a machine learning model, you often need someone who supplies the data. Was that data complete? Was it representative of all ethnic groups? Was it labeled correctly? Then you have the computer scientists who decide how to extract the important things out of that data. You have the person who supplies the machine learning algorithm, and you may have users who also help to train it. So the other problem you have with AI is who's liable. whose contribution actually led to that error. And so I think as a practical measure, a key part of regulation in this space is to make sure that within your country, there is always someone who has enough money who you can sue and who is ultimately responsible for the operation of the AI. And then the final special consideration for AI is the way in which it can scale up an activity. Because it is intended to automate a previously human task, I can, just using computer power, replicate 100 people, 100,000 people, 100 million people, and get tasks done that much more quickly. And that particular aspect of AI means that its economic impacts are very hard to predict. And so you're absolutely right to talk about unemployment, but I think it's more about it changing the economics of society and whether we want it to. So to give you an example, AI, all of a sudden this year, has become so powerful at creating illustrations that you could do away with human illustrators quite plausibly if you wanted to. Now, I don't actually think that's going to create unemployment. Historically, there's very little evidence that automation creates unemployment. Well, what it does is temporarily individuals become unemployed and they have to retrain, but societies as a whole find new activities to keep them busy. Now, AI might be different, but there are no particular signs yet that it's having an impact on overall levels of employment. It may affect what jobs people do. But again, this is a social issue, whether we want AI to do the jobs it can do, whatever those are, or if we want to choose the jobs we would like to delegate to the AI. So, I mean, these are massive topics, and I'm not even going to talk about the sci-fi computer wants to kill us bit. It's just too difficult. But brilliant presentations. Thank you both.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matt Savi, for your wonderful contribution. Thank you once more, our two mentors. I think today, Mr. Akin won't be joining us for some reasons, so we'll be having only the two mentors for today. Thank you very much once again for choosing to mentor us today. We are very happy to have you here. So the next thing now is we'll be going to the picture session before we come back to the question and answer session. So you are all encouraged to put out your video, take a screenshot of our session today. You can post on your social media platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, and co. You tag JIIPCC, you can tag our mentors today and write a thing or two that you've learned. Thank you very much. Please kindly put up your video if you haven't done so for, I think, 30 seconds. Thank you very much as you do so. Ivi Omobodun, Oluwab, Sola, kindly put up your video back. Thank you very much. Folaj, Victor, Onyebode, kindly do so. Thank you very much. I think we've taken some pictures. So we'll move to the question and answer section now. I don't know if any mentee has any question aside from the question sent to me for our mentor in the course of our session today. You can raise your hand and I'll call you to ask our mentor before we treat the question you sent earlier. If any mentee has any question, please, you can raise your hand. Indicate by raising your hand, so I'll call you. Please remember, it's an interactive class, so you can speak directly to our mentors right now. Thank you. Okay, I think Oladotun will raise his hand, so you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, here's my question. During our research or during our work together as a group, we let me say I had some difficulty narrowing down the laws applicable to artificial intelligence in many of the countries. Let's say Nigeria will be a case study. So one is, how do we follow the legal framework around artificial intelligence? Because for me, I'm a lawyer or I'm a law student, so I'm interested in the legal framework. How do I follow the developments in the legal framework? Maybe not particularly in Nigeria, but if I can have like examples in Nigeria, that would be great. But looking at international standards, what's the general applicable law, and how do I follow the trend so that I know what law has been passed and to what extent are artificial intelligence devices compliant with these laws? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll go first. So the challenge you face is a challenge everyone faces. You're not alone. It is very, very hard. The OECD, which has already been mentioned for its guidance, they have a tracker on their website of AI-related laws. Now, but there's too much for any person to follow, I'm afraid. So that's a good place to see everything and filter it by country if that's what you want to do. I think if you want to figure out what the general trends are, again, the OECD is a good place. There's also JIIPCC, which is GPAI, and that's a group of 25 countries who are working together on what we should do about AI. But in terms of the most developed legal framework, it's currently the EU. So their AI Act is the most complete system, and that is likely to become the relevant level of regulation for anyone who is selling products into the EU. So it will have a large global impact. China also has some developed regulations on AI, which are mainly, from what I understand, I haven't looked at them myself. What I understand, there's quite an interesting sort of social aspect. So how long should people be on computer and things like that, which might be of interest to you. Now, the other question, though, is these are all laws which are expressly about AI, but actually all laws apply to human activities, and whether they're doing it themselves or using a computer to do it. So, you know, the Theft Act in the UK, or discrimination at work, or intellectual property. I mean, just because it's AI doesn't mean it doesn't fall within our normal laws. And indeed, I think for the vast majority of the issues that AI presents with, things like product liability, our laws are already in place. It might be quite difficult to apply them, and it might be quite hard in a court case to prove exactly what happened, but the principles were there already. So, you know, one could function in a world without any regulation of AI, but I think for the reasons we've stated, the opacity and the scaling and the bias, it is relevant to try to have special measures, but those special measures are really to make sure you've considered the risks, you've tried to mitigate them, and you've got the records which would allow people to figure out what happened, which is really allowing it to then fit into other laws. So if I want to know if someone was harmed and I need to figure out if they were liable, I apply normal liability laws, but the regulations help me figure out what actually happened, because people have actually had to do impact assessments and keep records of that. So in summary, look at the OECD for specific developments on AI, but Nigeria or the UK or any country, all of our laws are relevant in the same way that all of our laws are relevant to the use of electricity or email or the like.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Matt. And I think if Ms. Belona has anything to say or any contributions to the answer, you can tell us too.
No, it's fine for this question. It's okay, I think.
Okay, so I think if there's anybody, okay, Grace is also raising her hand, so you can ask a question.
Yes. So my question is for Mr. Matt. You said something about how, when I mentioned Netflix, about how we should draw distinctions in AI. But don't you think websites or applications that make use of recommendation systems also use a measure of AI?
Yeah, so I mean, this comes back to what is the definition of AI, and a recommendation system is AI on some definitions. You are either training it to recognize the characteristics that people like and you give it an output, or you're using something very, very simple like there's a thing called K nearest neighbor, and that's where you collect the qualities of various things. Maybe it's length, or if it's a film, if it's a comedy, and who's in it. And then you just very simply try to find the most similar film to the one that was last liked by someone. I mean, it's a basic form of artificial intelligence. It's not the sort of artificial intelligence generally that people are excited about. The stuff that people are excited about is machine learning, which relies on large training sets and has these issues of opacity. And there's hype in this field as well. So, people want to sell their products and to get investors, and they will use pretty basic data analytics and call it AI, which confuses the subject as well. So, in answer to your question, the example you gave, I don't think the regulators are worried about that sort of AI. You can call it AI. Some people don't consider it AI. I think what a lot of people say is it's probably better at the moment to focus on machine learning in particular. And when we say AI, a lot of the time, what we're worried about is machine learning. And that's a more precise term for the issue.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So I'll be moving on to the questions that we sent earlier, which is I also posted the questions on the chat box. So the first question is for Mr. Matt. Who does one sue if an AI artificial intelligence infringes on a human right, the maker, or the artificial intelligence itself?
Definitely not the AI itself. The AI itself, at the moment, as far as I'm aware, has no legal status anywhere in the world. There was the example of Sophia in Saudi Arabia, which I think was given citizenship, but I mean, that's a total anomaly. That's not normal. To give you a contrary example, although it didn't happen, in France, there was a move to change their constitution to expressly say that AI will never be given legal status. They didn't actually make it the law, but it's a big debate. But it's speculative. It's bordering on science fiction. So at the moment, there's no prospect of seeing the AI itself. But the maker is not necessarily the person responsible either. And I touched on this earlier, but the number of people who would be involved in an AI system. Yeah. And if I take a self-driving car, it's how the car functions as a car. It's the sensors on the car and whether they were accurate and operating correctly. It was the training data and whether that was adequate. Yeah. It's the machine learning model itself and whether it had flaws. And there may be contributory issues to do with the owner of the vehicle. Did they maintain it properly, etc.? So it's going to be very complicated. And that is why I said you need to make sure you have someone in the country with money who will be held liable. And that's what the EU is doing. So the EU has proposed that if you sell an AI-based product into the EU, you have to have someone who's ultimately responsible within the EU. Alternatives to that have been proposed, but again, haven't been put in practice, such as having a central compensation fund in a country. So if someone's harmed, they just get compensation, and we don't even try to figure out who's liable necessarily. A similar one, which is being used in some fields, is insurance. You have to make sure there's insurance if someone gets a payout. But that's for things like road collisions where you can tell what's happened. I've not heard of insurance against human rights abuses. That would be a much harder thing to achieve. So yeah, you're definitely suing people or legal entities like companies or governments. If it's human rights, you never know. But it will be a complicated legal question and complicated issue of evidence as well to figure out who's in fact responsible.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, I don't know if Miss Verona has any contributions to that. You can give it, please.
Yes. I go in the same way as myself because giving this power to artificial intelligence, it's like assuming that artificial intelligence is already kind of a legal person or a legal institution. Not already the case. Definitely not the artificial intelligence itself. But as he said, in the pipeline of building an AI system, there are many actors, and at each step of the development, there are many ways that we can bias the system or we can fault the system. So it can be the error can come because we did not use the right representation of the society. I mean, the data are not complete or the data are biased. It can be because the model we use was not adapted. It can be used because maybe we are testing the model in the wrong environment. It can be many reasons, but definitely not the AI. But we could just find a way to how to correct what happened in case of misuse or error of AI. What should we do? This is where this is what we should focus on. How to solve if in case of an AI did an error, what should we do? This is what we should focus on because for finding who is responsible is not an easy task. And but yeah, that's all.
Sure. I think the next question is for you, Ms. Verona. So, who owns the creation of artificial intelligence? I think that's the right question.
Okay, this kind of thing, definitely not the AI because I don't know if I should make this difference. For now, we assume that the AI they do not have this kind of conscience like human being. They just try to match entries to outputs. It's just an algorithm. It's just like a mathematical formula. I mean, it's something like that. It's true that we do not really understand how we move from the entry to the output. For now, it's not clear what really happens. But this is the process. We have some entry, we have the output that we want, and the machine learning model trying to match the input and the output. They do not have any kind of, for now, they do not have any consent. So basically, we assume that everything they are doing is something that they have learned from the environment. So it's not the AI itself. It could be the creator of the AI. I will tend to say that's the creator of the AI. But if I also say that it's the creator of the AI, it also means that the creator of the AI is responsible of everything that happened. If the AI behave bad, the person who is the creator is also responsible for that. So it's I will just say that the team, not the person, the team who built the AI is just what is the author or the creator of the AI. They own the AI. For example, we know that some AI belongs to Google, some AI belongs to Intel and so stuff, because they are the one who create or builds the AI system.
Thank you very much. Very good. So,
yeah, Mr. Matt, you can contribute.
My specialism is intellectual property, so I'll answer it from that perspective. So, first of all, even if intellectual property didn't exist, if you may not own something, but you might control it. So if I have an AI that creates something and I don't let anyone else see it, then I have effective control of it. But if I want to share it with other people and I want to be able to monetize it, I may need to have to prevent them copying it, or if it's an invention doing the same thing, and that may require some sort of intellectual property. At the moment, our laws were never designed to deal with creations by AI. And I put in the chat a link to DALL-E 2, and that's just one of about 5 very effective AIs now that can create an image from a description you put in of the subject matter and the artistic style. So Bologna is absolutely right that AI doesn't know what it's doing. All it's doing is matching inputs to desired outputs. But although mathematically that's true, it is now creating stuff which no one has created. It's creating new works which are of the standard that you'd expect from an artist, which is an amazing time to be alive, and we'll see what happens with that. Now, in terms of IP, in short, in almost every country in the world, an artistic or a literary work made by a computer is owned by no one. Now, as I said, you can control it, maybe, but it's not actually owned by someone, so you can't stop someone copying it. The only exceptions actually are the UK and Ireland, which have rules for computer-generated works, but so far there's been extremely little use of those laws. But that it's only now becoming interesting what they can do. So we'll see if there's more legal interest. For patents, if an AI creates a new invention, again, so far everywhere in the world that's not patentable. So you can't stop someone else doing the same invention. So at the moment, the only ways to own the creation of a trade of an AI is to keep it as a trade secret in most of the world, which means if you share it with someone, it has to be done with a contract where they also keep it a secret, and you can monetize it to sell it to someone for their own use, but that's quite a restrictive form of intellectual property. This is an ongoing debate at the World IPO office. We may see that the law changes, but to get back into Bologna's field of expertise, this is a moral question as well as an economic one. What will stimulate the most inventions and the most creative works of value to society, but morally, should we value the creation of a computer, or should we keep humans on a different level in terms of human dignity and society?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Matt, for the answer and the contribution, and thank you very much, Ms. Beluna, for the answer. So the third question is for Ms. Beluna. Why is there so much distrust with the AI system among many African countries?
Yes, I think the first reason is the lack of skills, the lack of knowledge. For example, I'm from Cameroon, and I did a master in machine intelligence but it was in Cameroon. It's just 2 years ago that you can have a master, you can follow an AI or machine learning or data science path in the university, and even that you can only attend this degree in the master degree. I remember, just for a small story, when I joined the program, it was in Rwanda, and in the beginning of the courses, I was expecting to have kind of basic notion about AI, but no. I attend the program in master degree, and the concept was already very deep. I was completely lost in the beginning. But those, for example, who were coming from other countries like South Africa, or I remember also Nigeria, at least they have some basics. And the case of Cameroon is the case of many other countries where it's not easy to access AI knowledge at the early age in your study. So you discover the concept very late, and it's not easy for you to really convince yourself. You can even convince yourself that it's something good for you because you want to do in the field, but really trust that we can swap, for example, the doctor at the hospital with an AI system. It's not something that will be easy for you to follow because you don't even understand what is AI. So lack of knowledge and lack of the skills are the first reason. And secondly, and I think this is not something related only for African countries, it's something that is a little bit globally, is that the way people first present AI in the beginning, like let's say 10 years or 20 years ago, was like AI was something that we come and replace human beings. This is the first approach, this is the first thing that people have in their mind. When you say AI, people only see robots who are replacing human beings in workspace and everywhere. And I really thank the first or the second group that really make the difference between robots and AI. Because most of the time when you pronounce AI, many people really think about AI that are coming and getting job from people, and people are afraid. People are not interested in something that will come and run the world and replace them. So this is why even for now, when you want to specialize in AI, it's a bit difficult for people to, I mean, even if you are working on a project, it's difficult for people to understand the impact or the importance of what you are doing, because they already have something that in mind that we have to break that we should break out in order to make sure that AI is really inserted in the positive way in our society, in Africa in general. That's why we should encourage this kind of session where we can start from the definition of AI to contribute more in the next session, where we can even go instead of just having this definition of AI, we show people what is behind AI. It's true that for now we are still saying that AI systems are opaque, they are not transparent, but at least they are kind of. I'm a computer scientist, mathematics background. I know that there are some concepts that if you understand, at least you can have an idea of what is training and model, what is testing and model, just to kind of demystify a little bit AI in people's minds and make AI concept or AI knowledge accessible to people in order to bridge that fear or distrust among African countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bellona, for that response. So I don't know if Mr. Matt also has something to add to that before we round up for today.
Sure, I'm happy to very quickly. I mean, I don't have an insight into the view in Africa of AI. I have a little bit of a view of Europe, but again, in Europe, there's such diversity of what people think. It's hard to summarize. I would say, and Bellona's made this point already, that so much of ethics is culturally specific, and it's definitely true of the approach to AI as well. So within Europe, for example, some countries, Germany is a pronounced example, are far more concerned about privacy than others. And so you can't generalize. I totally agree that anything that's unknown is potentially scary if you hear it's going to replace jobs, and the only way around that, and there are scare stories here too, you know, so that's a universal issue. The other things I would say is that anything that's imposed from outside of your country is a concern as well. So Europe is very concerned about the influence of the US and China on its technology and on its social development long term. So, you know, you need to understand technology and have a leadership role to feel comfortable with it, and that is hard to achieve for any country, and we're all trying to achieve it at the moment.
Beautiful contribution from Mr. Matt. True, when anything foreign is coming into a country, or even in your house, if someone that's a foreigner is coming to your house with something new, you'd have that initial, you'll be skeptical about it. So it's very understood. So I think that we'll be taking the last question before we end for today. If you have a question, please just raise your hand up and you'll be called. So, okay, so I would read out the last question. Okay, Ivy is raising up her hand. Before we take your question, I'll just read this out. How can world powers prevent AI from falling into the hands of a wrong person? How can the world powers prevent AI from falling into the hands of the wrong person? So we'll take a comment from Bellona first, and then we'll take Mr. Matt's comment also.
I like this question because how do you know that someone is the wrong person? I'm not sure that you can see that someone is the wrong person. I think the right question here is to how to make sure that we do not use AI. How can power make sure that we do not use AI in the wrong way? Because saying the wrong person, you can't know that someone is the wrong person or not. And the good answer about this is the governance, the regulation, all the principle, AI regulation, AI governance are those disciplines that are being constructed just to make sure that AI is used in the way that people or the environment or the society needs. And this is the only way that we can make sure that we always use AI for good, if I can make it simple that way. So governance, regulation should just make sure that any time we accept to deploy an AI model in a sector, make sure that it's for the good of this country, and also that it has been built in the right way, respecting the principle, respecting the law, and we should also make sure that there is a strong that we have to control or to make the right decision in case where the AI is not is harming someone. We should also make sure that there is a strong regulation or the strong compensation, which is set.
Sorry, Bellona, I think you're muted now. I don't know if you're still speaking.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I was.
Did you get my answer?
we certainly got some of it, which was, it's not a question of wrong people or that's a hard call to make. It's more about making sure the machines are designed in the right way, et cetera, which I think was a really good answer. And I think practically speaking, I really like that approach. I think there is a lot of concern about cybersecurity and the like. If you think about viruses, if they become more intelligent, have serious issues of infrastructure security as well as cybersecurity and the like. So we may end up, well, we are, let's face it, we are in an arms race when it comes to cyber generally, and AI is part of that issue. And this is way out of my expertise, but the one thing I found very interesting is if you look at OpenAI was created on the premise that there would be people using AI for good and people using AI for bad. And the best approach was to make sure everyone has AI and everyone has the best AI on the basis that there are more good people than bad people. And that the good actions will outweigh the bad actions. I have to say, they lost confidence in that mission quite quickly because they developed a very powerful text generation AI, and they in the end said it was too dangerous to release. So, which is an interesting question itself. How can text be dangerous? But yet the idea was you could swamp legitimate sources of information with machine generated fake corrosive information. So there you are. That was one philosophy which no one's currently followed, which is to give it to absolutely everyone. We're in an arms race, I suspect.
Wow, that's an interesting answer, an interesting point of view. So I'll just call on those raising up their hands. So I'll call Ivy to ask her question, and then Joel can also ask his or her question, and then the mentors will take the questions together. So you can ask your question, Ivy.
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm from Nigeria. I wanted to ask, my question is actually a two-part question. Is it necessary because of the complexity of AI now and the algorithm and whatnot that we as lawyers, and because I'm a law student, have to take courses now and learn machine language or Python or any of that? 1, 2. I noticed this trend when we were explaining that they were like it's like as if we're carrying the responsibility of the AI. So what if someone uses an AI for something? Who do we sue? The author himself, the person uses it, and the idea of getting certain user functions banned? Yeah, those are just my questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Ivy. Let's get Joel's question also, so that the mentors can answer them together.
Okay, Ma. I'm Joel from Nigeria. So,
Okay.
in the course of the interactions, Mr. Matt mentioned the EU regulation as one of the very notable regulations as regards AI. And what came to my mind is the fact that we really do not yet understand the system. When regulations come into play, the reality is that most innovative ideas are scared away. Now, let me give this instance. At the time when Europe introduced the GDPR, if you notice, the innovations that are in Europe are not as much as the innovations that are in US. The policy in US is that they first allow the innovations to find expression before they regulate it. So my question is, when is the best time to wait to really understand the system before you regulate? Because the result is that it will cause a chilling effect. Chilling effect in the sense that many innovative ideas, especially startups, because they cannot afford expensive lawyers, they tend to shy away from moving on with their innovations. That's my question.
Thank you very much for that question, Joel. Okay, so we'll be taking the first answer from Bellona, and then we'll also hear from Mr. Matt. So over to you, Bellona.
Okay, the first question regarding whether students in law should take machine learning courses and Python courses, and I would just say that it really depends on what you expect to learn from AI. For me, for example, for laws for someone interested doing law, you don't have to really know how to code an AI system, but you can take a courses that help you to understand, for example, how AI works in general, the type of problem that AI can solve, really understand like in this situation, this is the most appropriate AI or class of AI that I can use. The goal of this class of the goal of problem, this is how it works. But go into knowing how to code, I think is a bit. You can do it if you really want to do it, but for your background, I think you should only understand, for example, the kind of problem you can solve with AI, how those problems, how AI in those problems works, how it can help to solve the problem, and then learn the kind of problem that could happen and see whether the law of your country is already taking into account those kind of errors and maybe think about about the different type of problem you might encounter. For the second, also I think she also had a question about who to sue in case of error, the creator of AI. Or I think for now, as we were saying previously, it's really difficult to have this person that you could bring to the court. But I think if we make sure that we have, I think it's a decision that a country or a society can just take. For example, as Matt precise in Europe, for example, if you decide to sell an AI, for example, in case of an error, they will find a way to compensate the harms or what happened. So we can just say that it depends on the decision that have been sent up about your solution. For example, in Nigeria, the Nigeria country can decide that if Bellona develops something and it's not working well, you can go to Bellona. Bellona she will compensate you, but also a country can decide that we provide all those people who are developing AI system per year. This is, for example, a tax that we have to solve error that might happen, so that if someone have a problem that is verified, that is true, that have we can just take that money and give it to any kind of compensation. I think it depends of, for now it's not clear, it depends of where you are, the rule that you are following. So it's something that really depends on where you are, depends on the country and stuff. About the second question, this is a really tough question, and I'm not sure that I can really help about this question, because I also have this question in my mind, and for the second question, I don't really know how to answer, because it's a big deal. But overall, I think that overall for me, I think I used to say, if you want to get things better in the future about AI in Africa, for example, we shouldn't wait. We shouldn't wait to have error. I mean, you shouldn't wait to have problem and then think about how we can solve the problem. We can learn from others. For example, for now, we know that AI is able to discriminate, AI is able to replicate unfairness and many other problems that we do not want in our society. I think even if we do not have, for now, we do not really understand the AI, we still don't have many AI applications in Africa, at least we can think about a right way to incorporate those values that we expect from the AI in the education of our young engineer or young student, everybody interested in AI, so that when we reach a point when we have our system that we have to regulate, at least we already know what problem what problem could happen, and already have some guideline to solve the problem, and then see if we have new problem and look for the right way to solve it. This is my contribution. Thank you.
So I'm conscious of time, so I'll be very fast if I can. So Ivy, I think that's a really, really good practical question about what you should learn. I would say, unless you want to be a patent attorney, someone who's actually drafting patents for AI inventions, you definitely don't need to be an expert in AI to be a lawyer working in this area. And that's for a number of reasons. The first is you're not going to have any competition anyway. There aren't any AI technical experts who are also lawyers, or they're very few. And that's because if you're an AI expert, frankly, you're going to make more money working for Google than becoming a lawyer, or working in finance or whatever. And then I totally agree with Bologna that it's possible as a non-scientist, let's put it that way, to know enough about AI to realize the legally relevant issues, such as opacity. You can readily understand if a technical person tells you that in some models there's 1 billion numbers to look at that no one understands, and that's why it's legally an issue about liability, and you don't need to have huge in-depth knowledge. So you can read up generally about AI. There's so much on YouTube and Wikipedia and the like. I would focus on figuring out what kind of law if you want to be a lawyer, focus on what kind of lawyer you want to be. And if you're interested in AI, it's a growing area. It's not a hugely central area anywhere in the world yet. So it may be a matter of timing as well, when you want to be an AI specialist. But yeah, I would definitely focus on understanding the general issues first. That said, if you love computer coding and it's a natural gift, why not? But it's definitely not going to be essential to working in this field. Given time, I'm not going to also talk about who's liable. I think we've talked about that a few times. So turning to Joel's question, I mean, you're saying, and it's a very interesting theory, maybe it's right, that regulation in Europe slowed down innovation. Maybe there are a lot of factors at play here. I would say, for example, that within the States, the United States, California has some of the strictest approaches to privacy and other sort of regulations, and yet it is the hub of innovation there. So I don't think there's necessarily a clear relationship between the levels of regulation and the levels of innovation. But you raise a general issue, which is when to regulate. And I think the European approach, which is quite extreme in terms of global standards, really boils down to, please think carefully about what you're doing and keep plenty of records. So if there's a court case, we can figure out what happened. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. And I personally think it is the right approach. And I think Bologna and I agree that the really tricky questions here, like what society do we want? The regulation doesn't really touch on it, and we don't have any answers yet, and we're not even attempting to answer those yet, except for a very small number of examples in the EU regulation of the sorts of AI that should be banned entirely. So things that manipulate you, which was Group 2's point, But generally speaking, there are very few things they've totally ruled out. Juliana, are we finished? Or?
Okay, sorry, I think I had a little technical issue.
Yeah, fine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matt, for
Yep. I think we may have lost you.
better understanding of artificial intelligence, governance, regulations, and ethics. So with that, we've come to the end of the session for today. I would like to say a very big thank you to Mr. Matt. Whenever we call, he always answers. He's passionate about mentoring the next generation, and we're so grateful. Thank you, Mr. Matt. Thank you also, Bellona. I reached out to her, and she was so gracious to oblige us. Thank you so much, Bellona, for bringing your wealth of knowledge and experience to talk to the next generation. And then I also want to say a big thank you to all the mentees. Thank you for researching. Thank you for working together as a team and for presenting beautifully. Thank you. Your assignments for next week will be sent to you. Please, I encourage that you take advantage of the private mentorship session, which is available, and that you also start preparing your assignments for week 8, which is the task of raising awareness in AI in a way that an illiterate or a child can understand. So please start working on it as a group, because you would have to submit it on the 8th, that's during the 8th week. So with that, we've come to the end of today's session. If you've not taken a picture, please take a picture, and don't forget to post online and tag your mentors so that they know that you actually learned something from what they taught you today. With that, we've come to the end of the session today. Thank you so much, everyone. Have an amazing weekend and rest properly. Bye. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Bellona. Thank you, Ivy. Thank you, Oladotun. Thank you, Olisakwe. Thank you, Hussein. Thank you, Olubusola. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Folaj. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Kashefa.